Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Let me start with some macro thoughts. This is the long-term chart of price returns. Collectibles is the asset class, so from vintage cars to so much more, and it's from Credit Suisse. Makes interesting reading. And also what's interesting is how the equity markets have outperformed the collectibles. US two-year yields jumped to 2.23% yesterday, which was the highest since 2008, before coming back a little bit. Investors are now reaping about the lowest earnings yield from the S&P 500 index relative to yields on 10-year treasuries since 2010. Home thoughts, a Syrian dad had to unfold several little shrouds before recognizing the body of his daughter, Farah. And it's quite awful, isn't it, when you think of these things. Sometimes these photographs come out of the feed and grab your attention, and you're just looking at something that's quite unfathomable. The horror is what Joseph Conrad wrote in the heart of darkness. And here too, the girl is a stateless Rohingya orphan. She lived with her relatives from Balukali makeshift camp, lost her family in Myanmar. Burmese military killed all her family members at that time. She was gang raped by the military. Again, the horror. The fading Western dream, children earning no longer more than their parents, says Holger. Political reflections. China has sent a naval force of at least one modern destroyer, a frigate, an amphibious assault ship, and a support tanker, which entered the Indian Ocean last week. Chinese warships have entered the Indian Ocean, marking a significant shift in regional power. They're there to keep India away from Beijing's interests in the strife-torn Maldive Islands. Presence has implications for Australia. This article is from an Australian newspaper. Naval posturing is nothing new. Gunboat diplomacy has been a major player in great power games of thrones for centuries. But it is odd for it to be played out so close to home. The Maldives are in the throes of a constitutional crisis. The little democracy has traditionally been part of India's sphere of influence, and the Eastern Indian Ocean is of course of significant strategic importance to Australia. Saying that recently a new kid has arrived on the block, and now Beijing's grown enough confidence to let its presence be felt in the area's affairs. And then describing the naval force, international affairs analysts believe they're there to stop India from intervening. Beijing, after all, has big plans for these little islands, and it doesn't want the locals getting in the way. Every day, more than 40 million barrels of oil passes through the strategic choke points at either side of the Indian Ocean. This includes the Straits of Hormuz, the Gulf of Aden, and the Malacca Strait. All pass through the waters between the Maldives and Ceylon to India's south. It's a vital arterial supply line, not least of all to Beijing. August 2013, I wrote a piece saying the sine qua non of President Barack Obama's pivot to Asia is US NATO power projection over the Indian Ocean. I said then, I have no doubt that the Indian Ocean is set to regain its glory days. Here's a photograph of the Chinese warships which sailed into the East Indian Ocean this month. Let me post a photograph of Ali the navigator who navigated us to Wasini Island, which is situated on the Indian Ocean as well. Now, another recent report says China is trying to acquire a military base in Pakistan, and this has created new concerns about Beijing's long-term strategic plans in the Indian Ocean. This report is in The Diplomat. Um, the new base is supposed to go up in Jiwani, about 80 kilometers to the west of the better-known Gwadar port. If China does establish a military base here, it will be its second foreign military base after Djibouti, which was set up in August 2017. The Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, given to China on a 99-year lease, could possibly be added to the facilities available to China, though Sri Lanka has reportedly promised India that it will not allow the port to be used for military purposes. All of this appears to fit with the concerted Chinese push to establish a long-term presence in the Indian Ocean, as well as to extend Beijing's power projection capabilities. The proposed air and naval facility in Jiwani will come up next to Gwadar in Baluchistan, where China has already established what appears to be a long-term maritime presence. The new base is also fairly close to Chahaba port in Iran on the Gulf of Oman. Gwadar is an important part of China's strategic plans, and it seems primarily to be driven by Beijing's fear of a potential naval blockade of its sea lanes of communication. Irrespective of how serious such a threat of a blockade is, China has justified its interest in Gwadar as driven by its need for alternate shipping routes. More recently, China has linked its interest in Gwadar with the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, one of the vital corridors of Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. Despite the insurrection in Baluchistan, in which both Gwadar and Jiwani lie, this is going to be a challenge for China to manage. China seems intent on doubling down on its Pakistan bid. Some time ago, I tweeted Badra Punchline says, does the Indian establishment and Narendra Modi appreciate the chokehold China has over India? The Doklam Plateau, Gwadar, Hambantota ports, and the intrusion into the Indian Ocean, all of which we're seeing, have gained further momentum. On that same time, I was talking on the 28th of August, I said China has established control over the South China Sea. It has created artificial islands and then militarized those artificial islands. I said Xi Jinping has Narendra Modi surrounded from the plateau to Gwadar to the Hambantota port. Sri Lanka, of course, gorged on Chinese debt and had to disgorge the Hambantota port to its creditor. Advanced its footprint in Pakistan, where it has leased the Gwadar port, and now we see this request for this facility in Jiwani. And then I was also saying China recently formally opened a military facility in Djibouti, that when you take these moves together, it's a material Chinese advance. Olympics, politics, North Korea's media charm offensive was the subject of an Al Jazeera listening post video sequence. Do take a watch of that. And I spoke about this on the 12th of February when I said Kim Jong-un unleashed his secret weapon on the world, that secret weapon being his sister Kim Jong, who evidently bamboozled South Korea's President Moon Jae-in. And I was saying she was now playing the soft power game. And I quoted Lao Tzu, water is fluid, soft and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. As a rule, whatever is fluid and soft and yielding will overcome whatever is rigid and hard. This is another paradox: what is soft is strong. And as in South Korea is said to be peeled off and going by his puppy dog smiles, President Moon River will be in Pyongyang before you can pronounce Kim Yo-jong correctly. Ex-Intelligence Chief James Clapper says the next phase of the Russia probe could be Trump's finances, most likely involving the finances of the Trump campaign and the president's businesses. In the wake of Friday's indictments of 13 Russian nationals by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Clapper said the next night on Anderson 360, I think there are other shoes to drop, notably the finances. I think that's going to be another profound thing that's going to come about this. What were the financial relationships between the Trump organization before the election and then the Trump campaign, he said. In August last year, I said any financial expert will tell you that President Trump's financial affairs are a smoking gun. International markets, US 10-year bond yields have crept up within reach of 3% for the first time in years. The volatility VIX index traded above 20 again. Dollar yen, which of course got to 105.50, has been backing up again, and we were last trading at 107.84. Quite a big move. I think everyone got very long yen at the highs and they're being squeezed out of their positions, which is something that the Bank of Japan enjoys doing. Swiss franc 0.9375, the pound last trading at 139.78, the Australian dollar been on the slide lately, 0.7846, Indian rupee 64.835, South Korean won 1076.66, the Real 325.53, Egyptian pound 17.7, and the Rand a little bit softer at 11.7653. This is a 3-month chart of the dollar index. The dollar is now rebounding. I don't think it actually got to my 88 target before starting a recovery. Euro dollar, we've been softening up here. Last trading on the euro dollar at 123.12, so softer again. Amazon is eating the world. This Bloomberg chart shows as Amazon continues to gain at the expense of the entire retail complex. This was the day this is after Walmart's stock crashed 10% after reporting slowing online growth. What happens when you get it spectacularly wrong? KFC crisis. Do you make fun of yourself? What would you do? Let's move on to the commodity markets. Gold 1326 trading. We've come off those higher elevated levels we were at not too long ago. Similarly, US crude oil $61.12 doing the same thing, coming off the highs we saw earlier in the year. Venezuela claims $735 million was raised in its first cryptocurrency sale. Announced late Tuesday night, Maduro offered no evidence to back up the claim, though the messaging notably came directly from Maduro's official Twitter account. And he tweeted in translation, "To big problems, great solutions. From the first minute the game started well and we started winning. 4.777 billion won, or $735 million, is the initial result of the operations of purchase intent of Petro. I inherited a broke country," says new Liberian president. Indeed he did. My piece over the weekend was called Wind of Change. Congo risks losing friendship with Zambia if it does not allow Kabila to stand for another term. Edward Lungu, of course, he's rather keen on standing for another one himself. President Lungu has warned Congolese that they risk losing the friendship with Zambia if they continue demanding that Joseph Kabila steps down. Speaking at State House yesterday, President Lungu said President Kabila is a very good president who is loved by more than 60% of Congolese, adding that few opposition members should not infringe the rights of the majority who love him, Kabila, to continue governing. He urged the opposition in Congo to practice real democracy by allowing the will of the people to prevail. Meanwhile, President Lungu has warned foreign countries not to interfere with domestic issues in Congo and Zambia. These people, Western countries, should desist from interfering in our domestic affairs. If our people want us to stay in office beyond the constitutional limit, that's our own choice. And so no one should be allowed to intervene, said Lungu. As I wrote over the weekend, President Kabila has finally acceded to entering the delivery room, but I said then this is clearly a problematic delivery. He's also replaced his interior minister amid declining security. I said in my article over the weekend, Africa is not a country and it's a ubiquitous meme, but at its core is an absolute truth. The continent is non-linear. Kinshasa is not Addis Ababa, is not Lagos, is not Pretoria, but in my view, a wind of change is blowing through this continent. South Africa has until 2019 elections to cash in on global windfalls. The Citibank, the Rand, bonds and stocks have climbed to record highs due to what analysts have dubbed the Ramaphosa rally, a buoyant market mood that has taken hold since businessman Ramaphosa was elected leader of the ruling African National Congress in December, and then the president of South Africa. There's been a very dramatic reassessment of South Africa's fundamentals in the last 3 weeks at Citi, then saying it's not a straightforward thing to implement reforms in mining, education, and the structure of corporate ownership and parastatals. What the president chooses to tackle first and when he's able to do that will become big questions. Conditions to go into the international market are absolutely better than they were a year ago. In this photograph, Cyril Ramaphosa is seen hosting a cabinet farewell cocktail in honor of former President Jacob Zuma. Cyril has been very proper in his treatment of the outgoing president. I remain of the view that you need to stay limit long Ramaphosa. South Africa's currency reached a 3-year high after Ramaphosa was sworn in as head of state on February 15th. On the chart. There's been a fantastic run in Rand assets. The so-called Ramaphosa rally has indeed materialized. It is now time for some reflection. I think that moment of reflection is an opportunity to get long again. South African all shares down 2.65% this year. Dollar versus Rand, last time I checked, 11.7653. Mercury, Venus and Saturn above the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. This occurs once every 2,373 years, apparently. Nigerian all shares up 10.21% this year. Cash-rich pension funds in Ghana drive world-beating stock gains. We are seeing more participation from local institutional investors, especially the pension funds. The temporary pensions account now transferred to them is enabling them to increase their take of stocks. The economy is growing and a lot of incentives like tax cuts and utility price decreases are out there to make business competitive. It shows we're in a period of a boom. The market is not hot yet. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 29.27% so far this year. Zimbabwe here bids farewell to Morgan Tsvangirai. An IMF staff team, there's been a huge sort of brouhaha around the IMF's facility with Kenya. Jan Nicholson, who's the IMF representative here in Kenya, said an IMF staff team is currently in Nairobi for discussions on a possible new program, and we are hopeful for an agreement, and issued the following press statement. Further to some press reports earlier today, I would like to clarify the status of Kenya's fund-supported program. The precautionary SBA-SCF arrangement remains in place until the end of March 2018. The second and third reviews of the program, due respectively in June and December 2017, could not be completed on schedule, as agreement could not be reached on stronger fiscal policies, and discussions were postponed due to the prolonged election period. Kenya continues to have access to resources since June, subject to policy understandings, to complete the outstanding reviews. An IMF staff team is currently in Nairobi for discussions on a possible new program, and we're hopeful for an agreement. This follows on the Bloomberg report, which said the IMF withdrew Kenya's access to a $1.5 billion standby loan in June. That hasn't stopped the country's central bank saying the funds are still available. Statements by the Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee after its past 4 meetings have referred to the availability of the standby facility. Its latest communication in January said the funds continue to provide an adequate buffer against short-term shocks in the foreign exchange market. The central bank didn't respond to a request for comment sent by email on February the 15th. The government has requested a new IMF program to replace the existing one that expires in March. An IMF mission began a visit to Kenya this week to discuss its replacement, Nicholson is saying. So, a little bit of an uncomfortable situation, but I think what's happened is I don't think the government engaged sufficiently with the IMF. We had a very sort of fraught election period, and I think the IMF are putting them on notice. This is a chart of the Kenya 6 7/8% June 2024 bond. Its current yield is 6.53%, and I'm assuming the government can probably sell bonds at 6.95% with a 10-year maturity. They are talking of also doing a 30-year bond. Kenyans in the diaspora sent home 197 billion shillings, which dwarfs everything else. Nairobi all shares up 6.16% year to date. Saharan was a strong feature yesterday. The NSE 20 is up 0.41% year to date. Once again, thank you for stopping by.